The final battle came faster than anyone expected. With the rogue Valen's help, Jack Harper and his team tracked Dr. Alan Carter to a hidden research facility orbiting a dying star. It was a risky move, going straight into enemy territory, but they had no choice. The information Clara had uncovered painted a clear picture. Carter was the key to the Valen's plans. If they could stop him, they might cripple the assassins' operations for good. As their ship approached the facility, Jack stared out the viewport at the glowing red sun in the distance. Its light bathed the structure in an eerie hue, making it look like something out of a nightmare. He felt a familiar mix of fear and determination bubbling inside him. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting humanity's future. "We go in fast and quiet," Rachel said, her voice cutting through the tension. She had survived the space station attack, reuniting with the group just hours earlier. Her presence brought a sense of calm, even as she outlined their dangerous mission. "Clara stays back with the ship. We can't afford to lose that data." Clara nodded, though her hands tightened around the edge of her seat. "Be careful," she said softly, her eyes meeting Jack's. "All of you." Jack gave her a small, reassuring smile before turning to follow Rachel, Marcus, and the rogue Valens onto the docking bay. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with blinking control panels. They moved swiftly, weapons drawn, every step echoing loudly in the silence. Inside the facility, they found evidence of Carter's work. Labs filled with alien tech, walls covered in schematics detailing attacks on human colonies. It was chilling proof of how deeply he had betrayed his own kind. Jack clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. There would be time for anger later, if they made it out alive. They reached the central chamber, where Carter stood surrounded by Valen guards. He looked older than his file photo, his face gaunt, and his eyes hollow. When he saw them, a flicker of surprise crossed his features, quickly replaced by smug confidence. "You're too late," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "The Valens will cleanse humanity of its flaws. You should thank me." "Flaws?" Jack snapped, stepping forward despite the weapons trained on him. "Our flaws are what make us strong. We adapt. We fight back. Something you clearly forgot how to do." Carter sneered but didn't respond. Instead, he signaled to the guards, who opened fire. Chaos erupted as the two sides clashed. Jack ducked behind a console, grabbing a fallen weapon and firing blindly. Beside him, Rachel shouted orders, her movements precise and deadly. Marcus took down two guards with a single shot, his aim as steady as ever. In the chaos, one of the rogue Valens tackled Carter, pinning him to the ground. The traitor struggled, shouting commands that went unanswered. The other Valens were too busy fighting to obey. Jack seized the moment, rushing forward to disarm Carter completely. "It's over," Jack said, his voice firm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Whatever deal you made with them, it ends here." Carter laughed bitterly. "You think this changes anything? The Valens don't need me to destroy you. You're already doomed." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Clara's voice crackled over their communicators. "Get out now. The core's destabilizing." Without hesitation, the group retreated, dragging Carter with them. Explosions rocked the corridors behind them as they sprinted toward the docking bay. By the time they reached the ship, the facility was collapsing in on itself, consumed by the fiery embrace of the nearby star. Back aboard their vessel, Jack watched as the facility disappeared into the inferno. For a moment, there was silence. Then relief washed over everyone. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. Rachel placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You did good, Jack. All of you." Jack shook his head, glancing at the others. "We couldn't have done it without each other." As the ship sailed away, Jack thought about everything they had been through. The battles, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was resilient. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Because in the end, it wasn't firepower or technology that defined them. It was their refusal to give up, no matter how dark things seemed. And that, Jack realized, was why the Valens feared them most. The shuttle hurtled through the darkness of space, its engines humming softly as it carried Jack Harper and the others away from the space station. Inside, the air was tense, heavy with unanswered questions and unspoken fears. Clara sat hunched over her backpack, clutching the portable drive like it was a lifeline. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the small device. Jack sat across from her, his mind replaying the events in the station. The chaos, the gunfire, Rachel's voice shouting for him to run. "Do you think they made it?" Jack asked finally, breaking the silence. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant, but the question hung in the air like a storm cloud. Clara looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but steady. "I don't know," she admitted. "Rachel and Marcus are tough. If anyone can survive that, it's them." Jack nodded, though the knot in his stomach didn't loosen. He wanted to believe her, but the memory of the commander's cold gaze lingered in his mind. The Valens were relentless, methodical. They didn't leave loose ends. And yet, part of him clung to hope. Hope that Rachel and Marcus had escaped. Hope that humanity still stood a chance. The rogue Valens piloting the shuttle said little, their focus entirely on navigating the vast emptiness of space. One of them glanced back briefly, its glowing eyes scanning the group before returning to the controls. Jack wondered what they were thinking, whether they felt guilt for turning against their own kind or pride for standing with humans. Either way, their presence was a reminder that not all enemies were irredeemable. After what felt like hours, the shuttle docked at a hidden outpost, a small battered structure floating near an asteroid belt. It wasn't much, but it offered shelter and a chance to regroup. As they stepped inside, Jack noticed how worn everything looked. Dust coated the walls, and the lights flickered faintly. But there were signs of life. Crates of supplies stacked in corners, makeshift beds lined along one wall, and a large table covered in maps and notes. "This is where we've been hiding," one of the rogues explained, gesturing around the room. "It's safe for now." Clara wasted no time getting to work. She set up her equipment on the table, plugging the portable drive into a small computer. The screen lit up immediately, displaying streams of data and encrypted files. Jack watched as she scrolled through them, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What are you looking for?" he asked, leaning closer. "The informant," Clara replied without looking up. "Whoever they are, they're working with the Valens. If we can find out who they are, maybe we can stop them." Jack felt a surge of anger at the thought of betrayal, a human helping the Valens. It seemed impossible, yet here they were, staring at evidence of it. Whoever this person was, they had blood on their hands, blood of innocent colonists, of people like Lily. Minutes turned into hours as Clara worked tirelessly. Finally, she let out a sharp breath, her fingers freezing over the keyboard. "I found it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The name, it's Dr. Alan Carter." Jack frowned, the name ringing a faint bell. "Who is he?" "He's a scientist," Clara explained, pulling up a file. "He used to work for Earth's Defense Command, but he disappeared months ago, after the first wave of attacks." "So he's the traitor," Jack said bitterly. "Why would he do this? What could the Valens possibly offer him?" "Power," one of the rogue Valens interjected, stepping forward. "Humans like him believe your race is weak. They think aligning with us will save you from yourselves." Jack shook his head, disgusted. "He's wrong. Humanity doesn't need saving. Not like that." As the reality of the situation sank in, the group began making plans. They couldn't confront Carter directly. He was likely under heavy protection by the Valens. But they could use the information Clara had uncovered to expose him, to turn his betrayal against him. "We'll need help," Clara said firmly. "We can't do this alone." Jack nodded. "Then we find allies. People who believe in humanity enough to fight for it." The rogues exchanged glances, then stepped forward. "We will stand with you," one of them said simply. For too long, we have followed orders blindly. It is time to choose a side. For the first time in days, Jack felt a spark of hope. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for something greater, something worth believing in. And as they prepared for what lay ahead, Jack realized one thing. The Valens might fear humanity, but humanity feared losing itself even more. The footsteps grew louder, echoing through the corridor like a countdown to disaster. Jack Harper crouched behind a console, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced at Rachel, who motioned for silence with a single raised hand. The rogue Valens had already taken positions near the entrance, their weapons ready but hidden from view. Marcus stood guard by the door, his finger hovering over the trigger of his rifle. Clara remained hunched over the console, her hands trembling as she tried to extract more information from the encrypted message. "They're coming," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. "At least 3 of them." Rachel nodded, her expression grim. "We can't let them find us here. If they discover what we know." She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. The stakes were higher than ever now. Whoever this human informant was, they were feeding critical information to the Valens, information that could doom humanity if left unchecked. As the first Valen soldier stepped into the chamber, the rogues acted swiftly. With a burst of speed, they lunged forward, catching the invaders off guard. The clash was brief but brutal. Weapons fired, sparks flew, and the sharp tang of burnt metal filled the air. Within moments, the rogue Valens had subdued the intruders, dragging their unconscious bodies into the shadows. "We need to move," one of the rogues said urgently, its translator device crackling. "More will come." Rachel didn't hesitate. "Clara, grab what you can and let's go. We'll regroup somewhere safer." Clara quickly transferred the data onto a portable drive before disconnecting her scanner. She stuffed it into her backpack, her movements frantic but precise. Jack helped her to her feet, and together they followed Rachel and Marcus out of the chamber. The rogue Valens led the way, guiding them through a series of narrow passages toward an emergency exit. But the station wasn't done testing them yet. As they turned a corner, they found themselves face to face with another group of Valen soldiers, this time led by a towering figure clad in black armor. It was the commander, the same one who had orchestrated the attack on New Haven. Its glowing eyes locked onto Jack, and for a moment he felt frozen in place. "You shouldn't have come here," the commander said in flawless English, its voice cold and mechanical. "Humans always make the same mistake. They think they can win." Jack clenched his fists, anger bubbling up inside him. "Maybe we do," he shot back, surprising even himself. "And maybe that's why you're scared of us." The commander tilted its head slightly, as if amused. "Scared? No. Curious, perhaps. You are unpredictable, dangerous. That is why you must be eliminated." Before anyone could react, the commander raised its weapon, aiming directly at Jack. But Rachel stepped in front of him, firing her own gun in a desperate attempt to shield him. The shot missed, but it was enough to break the standoff. Chaos erupted as both sides opened fire, the narrow corridor filling with smoke and deafening blasts. "Go," Rachel shouted, pushing Jack toward the exit. "We'll hold them off." Jack hesitated, torn between staying to fight and following orders. Then he saw Clara struggling to keep up, her backpack slipping from her shoulder. Without thinking, he grabbed her arm and pulled her along, forcing himself to run despite the chaos behind them. They reached the emergency exit just as the sounds of battle began to fade. Outside, the cold night air hit them like a slap, but there was no time to catch their breath. The rogue Valens were waiting nearby, ushering them toward a small shuttle hidden among the rocks. "Get in," one of them urged. "We'll take you to safety." Jack climbed aboard, his mind racing. He wanted to ask about Rachel and Marcus, about whether they were still alive, but the look on the rogues' faces told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As the shuttle lifted off, Jack stared out the window at the space station shrinking in the distance. For the first time, he realized something important. The fight wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that humanity wouldn't back down, no matter how powerful the enemy. And deep down, he knew they had a chance, as long as they kept fighting. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of the aliens' words hung heavy in the air. Finally, Rachel nodded slowly. "If you want our trust, you'll have to earn it." The rogue Valence agreed, offering to guide the group deeper into the station. As they followed, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that their mission had just become far more complicated. Allies among the enemy. It sounded impossible. But then again, nothing about this fight had been simple. And as they moved forward, Jack realized something important. Humanity wasn't alone in its struggle against the Valens. Even among their own kind, some dared to defy the odds. The outpost was no longer safe. The attack had left its mark, both on the group and the crumbling structure around them. Jack Harper wiped sweat from his brow as he helped Clara pack up their supplies. The Valen device was tucked securely into her backpack, its secrets still partially hidden but vital to their mission. Marcus stood guard near the entrance, scanning the forest for any sign of movement. Rachel paced back and forth, her mind clearly working through their next steps. "We need to move," Rachel said finally, breaking the tense silence. "They'll be back, and next time, it won't just be drones." Jack nodded, though his body ached from the previous fight. He knew she was right. Staying in one place too long was a mistake they couldn't afford to make again. But moving forward meant stepping deeper into unknown territory, and closer to the space station that might hold answers about the Valence plans. As they prepared to leave, Clara hesitated. "What if the coordinates are wrong?" she asked, glancing at the others. "What if this is another trap?" "It's a risk we have to take," Rachel replied firmly. "We can't keep running blind. If the Valens are using that station as a base, we need to know what they're planning." Marcus adjusted his weapon, his expression grim. "Let's just hope we don't walk straight into an army." The journey resumed under the cover of darkness. The forest seemed even quieter now, as if holding its breath. Jack stayed close to Clara, keeping an eye out for anything unusual. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made him flinch, his nerves stretched thin after the ambush. Despite his fear, he forced himself to focus. They couldn't afford mistakes, not when the stakes were so high. Hours later, they reached the edge of the forest. Before them lay a wide, open plain bathed in pale moonlight. In the distance, a massive structure loomed against the horizon, the abandoned space station. Its metallic frame gleamed faintly, reflecting the light of the stars above. It looked ancient yet imposing, like a forgotten relic of a bygone era. "This is it," Rachel murmured, her voice barely audible. "Stay sharp. We don't know what's waiting for us inside." The group moved cautiously across the plain, their footsteps muffled by the soft soil beneath them. As they approached the station, Jack noticed something strange. Parts of the structure appeared damaged, as if it had been attacked long ago. But there were also signs of recent activity. Fresh scorch marks on the walls, and tracks leading toward the entrance. "They've been here," Marcus said quietly, pointing to the tracks. "And not too long ago." Rachel nodded, her hand resting on her weapon. "Let's go in. Keep your eyes open." The air inside the station was cold and stale, carrying the faint scent of rust and decay. The corridors were dimly lit by flickering emergency lights, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Every step echoed loudly, making it impossible to move silently. Jack felt a chill run down his spine as they ventured deeper, unsure of what they might find. Then they heard voices, low and guttural, speaking in a language none of them understood. Rachel signaled for the group to stop, motioning for them to take cover behind a stack of crates. Peering around the corner, Jack saw figures moving in the distance. They weren't Valens, at least, not the ones they had encountered before. These aliens wore tattered armor and carried makeshift weapons, their movements cautious and deliberate. Who are they? Clara whispered, her eyes wide with confusion. I don't know, Rachel admitted, her tone wary. But they're not part of the main force. Maybe they're defectors or survivors. Before anyone could respond, one of the aliens spotted them. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then the alien raised its weapon, shouting something in its harsh language. Jack tensed, ready to act. But instead of firing, the alien lowered its weapon and stepped forward. It held up its hands in a gesture of peace. Behind it, the others did the same. We mean no harm, a voice said suddenly, in English. The words came from a translator device strapped to the alien's wrist. You are human. Rachel exchanged a glance with the others before stepping forward cautiously. Yes. Who are you? The alien hesitated, then spoke again. We are Valon rogues. We do not serve the commanders. We seek to stop them, as you do. Jack felt a surge of disbelief. Could they trust these strangers, or was this another trick? Rachel seemed to share his skepticism, but she didn't dismiss them outright. Why should we believe you? She asked sharply. The alien met her gaze steadily. Because we know what they plan to do. And because, like you, we fear what humanity will become if they succeed. It's possible they're using it as a base, Rachel said thoughtfully. If we can get there, we might be able to gather intel, or even sabotage their operations. Jack listened quietly, his mind racing. A space station sounded dangerous, but it also made sense. The Valons were methodical. They wouldn't leave their plans to chance. If they had a hidden base, it would explain how they coordinated their attacks so effectively. But getting there won't be easy, Marcus pointed out. We don't have a ship, and even if we did, we'd be flying blind. We'll figure it out, Rachel replied firmly. One step at a time. As night fell, the group settled in for a restless sleep. Jack volunteered to take the first watch, sitting near the entrance of the outpost with a rifle slung over his shoulder. The forest outside was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt unnatural. He stared into the darkness, his thoughts drifting to Lily and the others back at New Haven. Were they safe? Would they ever see them again? Suddenly, a faint sound broke the stillness. A soft click, barely audible over the wind. Jack froze, his grip tightening on the rifle. Slowly, he rose to his feet, peering into the shadows. At first, he saw nothing. Then movement caught his eye. A shadow slipping between the trees. Wake up, Jack whispered urgently, shaking Rachel awake. Something's out there. The others stirred, reaching for their weapons as Jack pointed toward the forest. Whatever, or whoever, was out there was closing in fast. Seconds later, the ambush began. 3 Valon drones emerged from the darkness, their glowing red sensors locking onto the group. Without hesitation, Marcus opened fire, his shot striking one of the machines and sending it crashing to the ground. Clara scrambled to grab the backpack, clutching the precious Valon device close. Rachel barked orders, directing everyone to fall back deeper into the outpost. Jack grabbed a piece of broken pipe lying nearby and hurled it at another drone, disabling its propulsion system. The third drone swooped low, forcing him to dive out of the way. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm him. But then he remembered what Rachel had said. Humans were unpredictable. They adapted. Drawing strength from that thought, he grabbed a fallen branch and swung it like a bat, smashing the final drone to pieces. When the attack ended, the group stood panting, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They had survived, but barely. This isn't over, Rachel said grimly, her gaze fixed on the wreckage. They know we're onto them now. And for the first time, Jack realized just how deep the danger ran. The Valons weren't just testing humanity. They were hunting them. The journey through the wilderness was grueling. The landscape outside New Haven was harsh and unforgiving, with jagged cliffs, dense forests, and icy winds that cut through their clothes like knives. Jack Harper trudged alongside Rachel, Marcus, and Clara, his boots sinking into the muddy ground with each step. They had been walking for hours, and exhaustion weighed heavily on all of them. But stopping wasn't an option, not when the Valens were still out there. As they climbed a steep ridge, Jack paused to catch his breath. Below, the forest stretched endlessly, its dark canopy hiding countless dangers. He glanced at the others, noting the determination etched into their faces despite their fatigue. Rachel led the way, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Marcus walked a few steps behind her, his weapon always ready. Clara brought up the rear, clutching the backpack filled with supplies and the partially decoded Valen device. "We should rest soon," Clara said, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm but firm. "We won't last long if we push ourselves too hard." Rachel nodded, though her expression remained tense. "We'll find shelter first. There's an old outpost about 2 kilometers from here. It's abandoned, but it might offer some protection." Jack didn't argue. His legs ached, and his stomach growled from lack of food. Even so, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every rustle of leaves or distant bird call seemed louder than it should be, setting his nerves on edge. He tried to focus on the mission instead of his unease, reminding himself why they were doing this. If they could find the Valens and stop them, they might save not just New Haven, but countless other colonies too. When they finally reached the outpost, it was in worse shape than expected. The structure was little more than a crumbling concrete shell, its windows shattered and walls covered in moss. Still, it provided some cover from the biting wind, and they quickly set up camp inside. Clara unpacked the device again, hoping to extract more information while the others kept watch. "Anything new?" Rachel asked after a while, crouching beside Clara. "Not much," Clara admitted, frustration creeping into her tone. "Their encryption is incredibly complex. I can only access fragments at a time." But she hesitated, glancing at the screen of her portable scanner. "There's something odd here. These coordinates, they match the location of an old space station orbiting a nearby star." "A space station," Marcus echoed, frowning. What would they want with that? The bunker was dimly lit, its walls lined with crates of supplies and makeshift equipment. Jack placed the strange Valen device on a table in the center of the room, where Clara immediately began examining it. Her fingers moved quickly but carefully, probing the object with tools scavenged from the colony's remains. The rest of the group gathered around, watching intently as she worked. "This is definitely alien," Clara muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's some kind of data storage unit, but I've never seen anything like it before." Jack leaned closer, squinting at the device. Its surface shimmered faintly, almost like liquid metal, and its edges were smooth to the touch. "Do you think we can open it?" he asked. "I'm trying," Clara replied, her tone sharp but focused. "But it's not going to be easy. Their tech isn't designed for humans to understand." Rachel crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. "If we can crack it, we might learn something useful, maybe even figure out their next move." Marcus, who had been standing quietly in the corner, spoke up. "Or it could be a trap. We don't know what this thing is capable of." Jack glanced at him, feeling a flicker of unease. Marcus was right. They couldn't afford to take risks, not when the stakes were so high. But at the same time, they couldn't ignore the opportunity either. If the device held answers, it might give them an edge against the Valens. "We'll proceed carefully," Rachel said firmly. "Clara, keep working on it, but don't push too far. If anything feels off, stop immediately." Clara nodded, her attention already back on the task. Jack stepped away from the table, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that this small, mysterious object was more important than it seemed. It was like holding a piece of the enemy in his hands, a reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. As the hours passed, the group made plans for what came next. New Haven was still vulnerable, its defenses weakened by the attack. They needed to fortify the colony, repair damaged systems, and prepare for another strike. But they also needed to track the Valens to find out where they had gone and why. That meant leaving the safety of the colony and venturing into unknown territory. "You're coming with us," Rachel said to Jack, breaking his train of thought. "Me?" Jack asked, surprised. "Why me?" "Because you've proven yourself," she replied simply. "You're resourceful, quick-thinking, and you've got guts. We need people like you if we're going to survive out there." Jack hesitated. He wasn't sure he was ready for this. Fighting alongside the team during the attack had been one thing, but actively hunting the Valens, that was something else entirely. Still, he knew he couldn't stay behind. Not when Lily and the others were counting on him. "All right," he said finally. "I'm in." By morning, the group had assembled what little gear they could scavenge. Weapons, food, medical supplies, all of it packed into rugged backpacks designed for long journeys. Clara had managed to extract some basic information from the Valen device, though much of it remained encrypted. What she did uncover, however, was enough to confirm their worst fears. The Valens were planning another attack, and soon. "They're targeting multiple colonies," Clara explained, pointing to a crude map projected onto a wall. "They're hitting them one by one, testing their defenses and learning from each encounter." "That means we don't have much time," Rachel said grimly. "We need to intercept them before they strike again." The journey ahead would be dangerous. They would travel through uncharted wilderness, facing harsh weather and limited resources. And then there were the Valens themselves. Fast, deadly, and always one step ahead. But despite the risks, Jack felt a strange sense of determination. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting the fragile hope that humanity could endure, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As they set out from New Haven, Jack glanced back at the colony one last time. Lily stood near the gates, waving goodbye. She looked scared but proud, and that gave him strength. Turning away, he focused on the path ahead, knowing that every step brought them closer to the fight of their lives. And deep down, he knew something else too. The Valens weren't done testing humanity, and neither was Jack. The battle had ended, but the cost was clear. New Haven lay in ruins, its once bustling streets now littered with debris and scorched metal. The colonists who survived gathered in small groups, tending to the wounded and searching for loved ones. Jack Harper stood near what remained of his workshop, staring at the destruction around him. His hands were blackened with soot, and his clothes were torn, but he barely noticed. All he could think about was how close they had come to losing everything. Captain Rachel Monroe approached him, her expression grim but determined. "We need to talk," she said simply, gesturing for him to follow. Jack nodded and fell into step beside her as they walked toward the edge of the colony. Marcus and Clara were already there, waiting silently. The four of them formed a loose circle, their faces reflecting both exhaustion and resolve. "We stopped them this time," Rachel began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "But this isn't over. The Valens don't attack without purpose. They're testing us." "Testing us," Jack echoed, frowning. "What does that even mean?" Rachel crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "It means they're studying us, our weaknesses, our strengths. Every move we make is being analyzed. That's why they hit so hard and so fast. They want to see how we react." Jack shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. Why would they bother? We're just humans. What's so special about us? "That's the thing," Clara chimed in, her voice soft but firm. "To them, we shouldn't be special at all. Most species in the galaxy are predictable. They follow patterns, stick to routines. But humans? We're different. We adapt. We improvise. Even when the odds are against us, we keep fighting. That unpredictability scares them." Marcus nodded in agreement. "They're not just here to destroy us," he added. "If they wanted that, they could have wiped us out already. No, they're here to learn. And once they figure us out," he trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The idea that an entire alien race saw humanity as some kind of puzzle to solve was unsettling. But there was something else bothering him too. "How do you know all this?" he asked, looking at Rachel. "Have you faced them before?" Rachel hesitated, then sighed. "Not personally, no. But we've seen what they've done to other colonies. Entire populations wiped out, their defenses dismantled piece by piece. They study their targets first, gathering intel until they know exactly how to strike. That's why we need people like you, Jack." "People like me," Jack repeated, incredulous. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. I don't know anything about strategy or warfare." "You don't have to," Rachel replied. "That's not what makes you valuable. It's your ability to think on your feet. You turned scrap metal into weapons during the attack. You adapted when most people would have frozen. That's exactly the kind of mindset we need if we're going to stay one step ahead of them." Jack looked away, unsure how to respond. He didn't feel like the hero Rachel was making him out to be. If anything, he felt like he'd been lucky. Lucky to survive, lucky to protect his sister, lucky to disable those drones. But deep down, he knew she was right. Luck only went so far. If they were going to stand a chance against the Valens, they needed more than brute force. They needed creativity, resourcefulness, and guts. As the group continued their discussion, Jack noticed something strange in the distance. A faint glimmer caught his eye. A reflective surface peeking out from beneath a pile of rubble. Curious, he excused himself and went to investigate. Pushing aside chunks of concrete and twisted metal, he uncovered what appeared to be a small device, no larger than his palm. Its sleek design and unfamiliar markings made it clear it wasn't human-made. "What is that?" Clara asked, joining him moments later. "I don't know," Jack admitted, holding it up carefully. "But I think it belongs to them." Clara's eyes widened. "A Valen artifact. This could be important. Bring it back to the bunker. We might be able to analyze it." As they returned to the others, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was significant. Maybe it was just another piece of alien tech, or maybe it held answers about why the Valens were so obsessed with humanity. Either way, one thing was certain. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And for the first time, Jack felt ready to face whatever came next. Jack exchanged a glance with Lily, who gave him a small, encouraging smile. Despite everything, she believed in him. And maybe, just maybe, he could start believing in himself too. As the human fleet engaged the Valen ships in a fierce aerial battle, Jack joined Rachel and her team in launching a counterattack. Armed with whatever weapons they could scavenge, they fought their way through the streets, reclaiming territory inch by inch. Each step forward felt like a victory, no matter how small. By the time the dust settled, the Valens had withdrawn, retreating into the depths of space. The colony was battered and bruised, but it still stood. As Jack surveyed the damage, he realized something important. The Valens might have been stronger and faster, but they hadn't counted on one thing: the unyielding spirit of humanity. And that, Jack thought, was something worth fighting for. The attack on New Haven was relentless. The Valens moved with a cold, calculated precision that left the colonists scrambling to survive. Their sleek ships hovered above the settlement, firing bursts of energy that tore through buildings and sent plumes of smoke rising into the sky. Panic spread like wildfire as people ran for cover, unsure of where to go or what to do. Amid the chaos, Jack Harper found himself doing something he never imagined. He was fighting back. Jack had always been good at solving problems, but this was different. This wasn't fixing a broken engine or patching up a leaky pipe. This was life or death. As another drone descended toward him, its glowing red sensors locking onto his position, Jack's mind raced. He spotted a discarded piece of machinery lying nearby, a heavy metal rod, and grabbed it without hesitation. With a swift swing, he smashed the drone's central unit, sending it spiraling to the ground in a shower of sparks. "Not bad for a mechanic," a voice called out behind him. Jack turned to see Captain Rachel Monroe approaching, her weapon raised and ready. She had short, dark hair and an intense gaze that seemed to pierce right through him. Behind her stood two others, Marcus Lee, a sharpshooter with a calm demeanor, and Clara Bennett, a medic who carried a bag full of supplies slung over her shoulder. They were part of Earth's Defense Command, tasked with protecting colonies like New Haven, but even they looked overwhelmed by the scale of the attack. "We need to fall back," Rachel said firmly, glancing around at the destruction. "They're too strong here. We can't hold them off forever." Jack nodded, though his heart sank. Falling back meant leaving parts of the colony undefended, including the school where Lily worked. He clenched his fists, torn between staying to protect his sister and following orders. Before he could decide, a loud explosion shook the ground beneath their feet. A nearby building collapsed, sending debris flying in all directions. "Move," Rachel shouted, grabbing Jack's arm and pulling him toward cover. The group sprinted through the streets, dodging falling rubble and blasts of energy from the Valen ships. Jack's lungs burned as he ran, but he forced himself to keep moving. He couldn't afford to slow down. Not now. When they finally reached a makeshift bunker on the outskirts of the colony, Jack collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. Inside, a handful of survivors huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Among them was Lily, clutching a young boy close to her chest. Relief washed over Jack when he saw her, but it was short-lived. The look in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. They were losing. Rachel quickly took charge, barking orders to fortify the bunker and tend to the wounded. Clara sprang into action, pulling medical supplies from her bag and tending to those injured in the attack. Marcus positioned himself near a narrow window, keeping watch for any sign of the enemy. Jack wanted to help, but he felt useless. What could he possibly do against aliens with advanced weapons and technology? As if reading his thoughts, Rachel approached him. "You did well out there," she said, her tone softer now. Most people would have frozen under pressure, but you adapted. That's rare. Jack shrugged, unsure how to respond. "I just used what I had. It's not like I planned any of it." "That's exactly my point," Rachel replied. "You didn't plan it. You reacted. Humans are unpredictable, Jack. We don't follow scripts or rules. That's why we scare them." Her words lingered in his mind as the sounds of battle echoed outside. For the first time, Jack began to understand what made humanity special. It wasn't about having the best weapons or the most advanced tech. It was about resilience, the ability to keep going, no matter how dire things seemed. Hours passed, and the attacks grew more intense. The Valens showed no signs of stopping, their drones systematically targeting every structure still standing. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Marcus spotted something unusual on the horizon. A fleet of human ships appeared in the distance, their engines blazing as they closed in on New Haven. "Reinforcements," Marcus shouted, lowering his weapon for the first time in hours. Relief rippled through the group, but Rachel remained cautious. "This isn't over yet," she warned. "The Valens won't retreat easily. We need to hit them hard while they're distracted." The year was 2147, and humanity had spread far beyond Earth. Colonies dotted distant planets, each one a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Among these colonies was New Haven, a small but thriving settlement nestled on the edge of a lush green planet. It wasn't glamorous like some of the bigger colonies, but it was home to people who worked hard and dreamed big. One of those people was Jack Harper. Jack wasn't a soldier or a scientist. He wasn't even someone you'd notice in a crowd. He was just a mechanic, good with his hands and always ready to fix whatever broke down. Whether it was a broken-down rover or a malfunctioning air filtration system, Jack could make it work again. His younger sister, Lily, often teased him about being the fix-it guy, but she admired him all the same. To her, Jack was a hero, even if he didn't see himself that way. Life on New Haven was simple but satisfying. Jack spent his days tinkering in his workshop, while Lily helped out at the local school teaching kids how to grow their own food. The colony wasn't perfect. There were shortages of supplies sometimes, and the weather could turn harsh, but it was peaceful. That peace, however, wouldn't last. It started with a strange signal. Late one evening, as Jack was finishing up repairs on an old mining drone, his communicator buzzed. At first, he thought it was just another request for help from someone in the colony. But when he answered, the voice on the other end wasn't familiar. It belonged to a woman named Rachel Monroe, a captain in Earth's Defense Command. Her tone was urgent, almost frantic. "Jack Harper, we need your help," she said without preamble. "The Valens are coming." The name sent a chill down Jack's spine. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Valens. They were a race of alien assassins, feared not just for their skill, but for their precision. Wherever they went, chaos followed. Entire colonies had been wiped out by their attacks, leaving behind only silence. And now, they were heading to New Haven. Before Jack could ask any questions, Rachel explained further. "We don't have much time. These aren't random raids. They're coordinated strikes designed to cripple us. You're resourceful, Jack. We've seen your work. We need people like you if we're going to survive this." Jack hesitated. He wasn't a fighter. He didn't know the first thing about combat or strategy. All he knew was how to fix things. But then he thought of Lily, of the kids she taught, of everyone in New Haven who trusted him to keep their machines running. If he didn't step up, who would? "I'll do what I can," he said finally, his voice steady despite the knot of fear tightening in his chest. Rachel thanked him quickly before signing off. Jack sat there for a moment, staring at the communicator in his hand. The weight of what was happening pressed down on him, but there was no time to dwell on it. The Valens were fast, and they wouldn't wait for anyone to prepare. Over the next few hours, Jack gathered tools and supplies, packing them into a bag slung over his shoulder. He told Lily to stay safe and promised he'd come back for her. She nodded bravely, though her eyes betrayed her worry. As Jack stepped out of his workshop, the colony seemed eerily quiet, as if it too sensed the storm approaching. By dawn, the first signs of the attack appeared. Sleek, black ships descended from the sky, casting long shadows over the landscape. Panic erupted as colonists scrambled for cover. The Valens moved with terrifying efficiency, targeting key structures and cutting off communication lines. Amid the chaos, Jack found himself cornered by one of their drones, a hovering machine armed with deadly precision. But Jack didn't freeze. Instead, his mind raced, searching for a solution. Spotting a piece of scrap metal nearby, he grabbed it and used it to jam the drone's sensors. With quick movements, he dismantled the device, turning its own mechanisms against it. By the time reinforcements arrived, led by none other than Captain Rachel Monroe herself, Jack had already disabled 2 more drones using nothing but his wits and whatever he could find around him. Rachel watched him with a mix of surprise and admiration. "You're full of surprises, Jack Harper," she said as she helped him to his feet. "Come on, we've got work to do." As they regrouped with others fighting to defend the colony, Jack realized something important. The Valens might be faster, stronger, and more advanced, but they lacked one crucial thing: humanity's ability to adapt. In that moment, surrounded by danger and uncertainty, Jack felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance after all.